Everyone, and are you recording now? Oh, okay, good. Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the presentation for today. It's called How to Go in Ice and Snow, and it's really about, a little bit about what we've experienced over the past few days. Over the weekend, depending where you live, if you lived out in the Worcester County area, you got 12 inches of snow. I live a little bit south of Boston. I got about 3 inches of snow that turned into 1 inch of solid ice by the time I got to it. This morning, this is Tuesday, um, there was a lot of black ice. In fact, kind of all along 146 from Worcester down to the Rhode Island line. There was a car crash that I heard the report, and it was at least 10 cars were involved in a multi-car crash. And when they say at least 10, I don't know if that means they just got tired of counting, but there was a bunch, and there was a lot of that because of black ice. And we'll talk about black ice issues as they pop up. But the program again is called How to Go in Ice and Snow. My name's John Paul. I've been with AAA now for, well, this April, it will be 36 years. I have worked for AAA originally in Massachusetts out of our Rockland, Mass office from 1985 to I think 1997. AAA Rhode Island took us over, moved our headquarters to Providence, where on a normal day is where I would normally go back and forth to work. But since COVID, my commute has changed from about 50 miles each way to, I counted it one day, about 26 steps down to my basement where I'm sitting now. So my commute has gotten better, but I don't get to see the people that I work with, except on calls like this with Zoom and Microsoft Teams and all of that sort of thing. I have a PowerPoint that I'm going to show. Again, it's called How to Go in Ice and Snow. And it's just some tips and things to think about when you're heading out in the wintertime. I can probably sum up some things you can do very simply when it comes to winter. The biggest one is just slow down. People drive too fast in the wintertime. People forget about driving in the snow. I did a radio interview this morning, and the person who hosted the show said to me, I don't understand it. I've lived in Massachusetts since the 60s, and how is it we all forget how to drive in the winter when we have winter every single year? And typical New Englanders, we complain about the weather, we complain about New England, but we live here from birth to death just about. So how do we forget how to drive? But it's just something that sort of happens. So I want to start our little PowerPoint here. And it is called, like I said, it is called How to Go in Ice and Snow. And just looks at some of the issues that really kind of affect the wintertime and winter driving, and some things to think about in the winter. So let's see. So that's what winter is supposed to look like, right? All pretty, and the trees all covered with snow, and everything looks so picturesque. Unfortunately, what sometimes happens, winter looks like this, and people are sliding off the road and it's miserable out. Last 2 years ago, we had a pretty substantial snowstorm. It wasn't a lot of snow, but it was a lot of whiteout conditions, similar to what you see in this picture. And in the 20 odd years I was commuting back and forth from Providence to home, it was probably the worst drive in the winter that I had done in a very, very long time. You were lucky if you could see just 100 feet in front of you. People were getting frustrated because of the slow moving traffic on Route 495 and 24 and 95, which is my way home. And people were sliding off the road. It was just terrible. And people were just going too fast. So we kind of take it from that pretty picturesque winter to that. So what can we do to, think about winter and some of what we can do? Can we improve our winter driving skills? Sure, we can. Do we need to think about car maintenance? Absolutely. How about emergency supplies in our vehicles? There are some things you should try to keep. And methods for getting out of some dangerous winter situations. We'll talk about that a little too. So when we do this in person, we usually ask this question. Winter in New England is, and we usually ask for people to answer. And usually some people say miserable, some people say beautiful, some people say something I look forward to. Not everyone says that. I get nervous about winter driving when. The last time I asked this question, some person said, whenever I have to. So you don't need to be nervous about driving in the wintertime. You just need to be respectful of the weather conditions. You don't need to be afraid of winter. You just need to respect that conditions change and your driving needs to change. And the scariest winter driving experience I've had is, and again, that trip a couple of years ago in what amounted to whiteout conditions. A few years before that, I'll say that one of my coworkers and I were going to a police event down in Falmouth. And it started at noontime. We left the office around 10:15 or so to get to Falmouth. We got there 15 minutes early. And about 1:30 or so, the police chief who was running the meeting said, you know what? It's looking pretty miserable outside. Why don't we just close up the meeting and go home? We left it about, I would say it was 1:45. We didn't get back to the AAA office in Providence till 7:30.
Oh,
Exactly.
yeah.
And the person I was driving with, it was a lunch. And it was a police chief's inauguration kind of thing for the new Chiefs Association. So it was kind of a fancy lunch. And it was some sort of steak with shrimp on top of it. My coworker's allergic to seafood or shellfish. So the entire time, the concern was she was going to go into like anaphylactic shock or something, and we're going to be trapped in the car and not be able to get out. Fortunately, nothing bad happened other than if you are going to if you are going to go on what could turn out to a long trip, my only suggestion is use the bathroom first.
Yeah.
Um, to prepare your car for wintertime, a couple things you should think about. If you have, most cars today have all-season tires. All-season tires work pretty well, but if you need to be out before the snow plows are out, so if you're a first responder, you're a nurse, you're a librarian that needs to be in the library before anyone else does, you might want to consider true winter tires for your car. We used to call them snow tires, but we call them more of winter tires now because the rubber compound they're made out of is actually stickier in cold temperatures. So when the weather gets really cold, when it gets down to 0 degrees, even all season tires can suffer a little bit. When you buy an all season tire, it's exactly the same all season tire that you would buy in Massachusetts, that you would buy in Arizona or in Orlando. So all season tires have to be a bit of a compromise. So they're not going to be as good in the wintertime, and they may not be as good in hot summer temperatures because they are a little bit of a four-season sort of tire. When people ask me about all-season tires and how good they are, I'll usually say something like, well, a good all-season tire with good tread on it will do about 60 to 70% as good as a winter tire in up to 4 or 5 inches of snow. Once the snow gets deeper than that, they're just not going to work as well. And that's when you want to think about winter tires. Winter tires just don't get you going. They also help you stop. And that's more important in my estimation. And, think about tires, as almost like shoes. And winter tires are specialized, just like golf spikes would be specialized, or tennis shoes would be specialized for playing tennis, or good hiking shoes, boots would be specialized for hiking. And you wouldn't wear flip-flops when you went hiking. You wouldn't wear flip-flops when you were playing golf, and you wouldn't wear golf spikes to the beach, I hope. So, think about your tires as being, yeah, the all-season tires will do okay. Winter tires will do that much better. One of the biggest reasons we come out to rescue people in the wintertime is the battery fails. And the typical life of a battery in the Northeast here is about 5 years, a little bit less. Now that's an average, some last better than others. But it's a good idea to replace your battery, to at least test your battery when it gets to be about 3 years old. We've had some interesting cars that have had short battery lives. Some Subarus have had incredibly short battery life. Yours apparently. Yeah, and by the way, if you're not on mute and you are on mute, I think if you just press down your space bar, it will unmute you momentarily if you want to talk.
No, that rings true for me.
Yeah, you had a Subaru with a battery problem?
Recently, yeah, I was only 3 years old.
Yeah, yeah, and the other one we saw quite a bit of was with some Hondas. The batteries only lasted a couple of years. And sort of the best idea always is to try to put the biggest, highest capacity battery they'll fit in that space. Little shameless plug for AAA, we will come out and test your battery and install a new one if you need it, right on the spot, whether it's in your driveway or wherever. We'll even come out and just test your battery and clean the battery cables, just as part of a regular road service call. So if you said, you know what, my hood was open on my car, the battery looked kind of dirty, can somebody come out and clean the connections and test the battery? And we will do that. And the equipment we have today does a good job of telling you the condition of the battery.
Dee had a question in the chat about how do you test a battery?
You need a specialized battery tester. There are all kinds of different ones. At AAA, we use the kind of what I think is the newest one available. And it's a little small thing. It's actually, as far as tools go, it's kind of cute. It's this little small tester. You hook it up to the battery. You scan the code on the battery, or you scan the code on the car, a barcode. A lot of cars have barcodes. It will tell you what the battery should be from new. And then what happens is the tester will test the battery in literally seconds. You read, that generates a QR code. You read that with your phone or tablet, and it tells you the condition of the battery. The car that one of our cars, the car was 5 years old, the battery 6 years old because the car was made in 2014. I tested the battery recently. It tested out at better than it was when it was new. So I was pretty happy with it, that the battery was still in pretty good shape. And again, they're averages. So it really depends on, some batteries can last 7 or 8 years. Some can only last 2 or 3, like your Subaru did. And when that happens, that's what obviously throws the average off. But the idea that your battery may not make it for more than 4 or 5 years is entirely possible. Batteries actually suffer in the summertime. It's summer heat that kills a battery. A battery in Orlando, Florida has a lot shorter life than one in Dayton. And the reason is it's the hot temperatures that play havoc with the chemical composition inside a battery. And the cooler temperature is a little bit easier. But in the wintertime, your engine's just harder to start, and your battery loses some capacity in the wintertime. When the temperature drops to about 30 degrees or so, your battery loses about 30% of its capacity. When the temperature drops to 0, you need almost twice as much energy as normal to crank the engine over, because the oil stick or the engine's just harder to crank over. So that's why people call for road service in the wintertime, because of just that reason. So you need to be aware of that. So I like to test the batteries in my car just October or so, just before it really gets cold, just to see what kind of shape they're in. So battery's important. Tires. Going back to tires a little bit. Tires are the only part of your car
Can
that ever
I
touches the road.
interrupt you again?
Sure, absolutely.
I'm sorry. Dee had a
Don't be
few more
sorry.
questions about the batteries.
Yeah,
AAA will come and check your battery, correct?
right.
Do you need to have a dead battery to do
Nope,
so?
nope. In fact, we'd rather test it before it's dead to let you
Okay.
know what kind of shape it's in. So
And
if you said, for instance, hey, my car is 3 years old and I want to have the battery tested just to see what kind of shape it's in. Now, it does count as a road service call. So, it'd be the same as if you called and said you had a flat tire. But we'll come out and we actually disconnect the battery cables. We clean all the connections and then we test the battery and then reinstall everything and make sure everything's in good shape. And if your battery tests out poorly, then if you want, we can sell you a battery too.
do you have an opinion of the halo things? The
I'm not sure what that is.
They start your car supposedly.
Oh, okay. Hang on.
It's
Is that the thing that's been on like Home Shopping Club lately?
yeah.
Yeah. I think it comes in different colors, which I always thought was sort of weird.
Yeah.
That something would come in different colors, but
Yeah.
I have here something like that. See if you can see this. This is a kind of, looks like a big flashlight, right? And let's see, we'll stop this for a second. Looks like a big flashlight. And it is kind of a big flashlight. You can actually turn it on. And it's a big flashlight. But if I can get it to shut off now. But it also has a spot in the side where you can plug in a little set of jumper cables like that. So it's a little set of jumper cables, and it actually is enough to jumpstart a car. Now, if the battery is terrible, 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 it might not, if it was internally shorted out or something like that, it might not work. But I have tried this. This is made by a company called Works. You've seen all their infomercials, and they sell everything from weed whackers to screwdrivers and all kinds of stuff. But I keep something like that, a portable jumpstart battery pack thing. We have 3 cars in our family. All 3 cars have one in it. All 3 cars have a portable air compressor in it. So I know that if I have a low tire, I can go to my trunk and take out my little bag that has all this stuff in it, and I can take the little air compressor out, plug it into either the battery or the cigarette lighter, depending on what kind it is, and then air up that tire so I can get home without having to change a flat tire. If for some reason I had a dead battery, I can take the little jumpstart pack out and jumpstart the car, and they actually do work. At AAA, we have bigger ones. They actually have something equivalent of like a small car battery in them. So they're a little heftier. They're a little more rugged. I think if you drop this one, it probably would break. But it actually is, it's the equivalent capacity of probably a medium-sized car battery. So it will jumpstart your car. And just like that one that you were talking about, you can also plug in like your cell phone charger to it. So you can charge up a cell phone with it, a tablet. It has the little USB connectors on the side of it. So they are pretty handy. I've seen some of the commercials for other ones, and it shows somebody like jump starting 5 cars in a row. I don't know if you can do that, but certainly to get yourself out of a pinch if you're in trouble. I stupidly, a couple of years ago, I was in a parking garage at a hotel, and I was sort of in a little bit of a hurry. I got out of the car, closed the door didn't fully close all the way. When the meeting got over about 4 hours later, I came out, I had a dead battery. My car was the only car on the floor of the garage. So the idea of having, somebody happen to stop by that could help me with a jump start, Sure, I could have called AAA, but I went into my trunk, got out my little jump start thing, hooked it up to the battery, red to red, black to black, waited a second or so, turned the key, started the car up, drove home. And bought a battery the next day, by the way. Because a funny thing about batteries is that when they go dead, they never come back 100%. So if you have a battery that maybe you're just somebody who leaves their lights on a lot, or you had a series of problems with doors that didn't close or something, every time your battery goes dead, it probably only comes back 85%. So you do that 3 or 4 times, then it's not going to have enough capacity to get the car going. That answer the question? Okay. And now that I found the chat, I see it over there. So if you have anything else and you want to ask, you either do that or you can just ask it out loud. Back to tires again for a minute. Tires are the only part of your car that touches the road, and it's an important part of your car. This is just an example I found somewhere that new tires on a wet road from 70 miles an hour. So if you had to make a panic stop at 70 miles an hour, it would take you about 195 feet to stop. If you had worn tires, so tires not quite illegal, but worn, it would take about 290 feet. Ball tires, 379 feet. So almost twice as much distance between new tires and worn out tires stopping from 70 miles an hour in wet weather. So it's really important to make sure your tires are in good shape for all weather driving, but especially in the winter time. And again, snow tires are really winter tires. Oops. Be good if I shared my screen again, wouldn't it? The little M+S with the little snowflake mountain thing means that that little snowflake mountain means that they're a true winter tire. There are all different kinds of them, and it's important to use if you are going to be out in the poorest of weather conditions, winter tires make sense. Going back to sort of a stopping chart again, in dry pavement with good all-season tires, your car will stop at about 134 feet from 60 miles an hour. On wet pavement, those same tires will take about another 10 or 11 feet to stop. On snowy pavement with winter tires, they'll take about 310 feet. And in snowy pavement with those same all-season tires, will take almost 700 feet to stop. So that's how much better winter tires work in winter weather conditions than all-season tires, according to Consumer Reports. Also, when it comes down to your car, you want to make sure all your lights are working. I just had a chat with somebody the other day from Sylvania, the headlight people, and I talked about an old study that AAA did years ago, and it hasn't really changed, that 1 out of every 4 cars on the road that has either a bulb that's out, a misadjusted headlight, something wrong with their lighting system. So you just want to make sure all the lights work good. You want to be able to see good in poor weather, but as important, you want to make sure people can see you. Clean the lenses frequently. Make sure they're doing their job. If you look at the headlights in your car and they kind of look, instead of the lenses looking nice and clear, and they look kind of white and hazy, depending on how bad they get, you can lose a lot of the effectiveness of your headlights. And also, headlights age. And when your car is brand new or headlight bulbs are brand new, the lights work really well. But over 2, 3, 4 years, they slowly start to dim. And you don't really notice until they finally just burn out. But if you have a car that's 4 or 5 years old, you go, you know what, the lights just don't seem to work as good as they used to. Well, that's because they're not working as good as they used to. It really is true that they're not going to do their job. We kind of joked yesterday when I was having this chat that what an ideal stocking stuffer Christmas gift would be a new set of headlight bulbs for somebody. More light on the road so you can see better. The braking system, you know, as important as tires are to make sure your car stops okay, they're not going to stop without a good set of brakes. If you have any suspicion that there is a braking problem with your car, get it looked at right away. Also, the exhaust system, if you happen to hear a little sound like a leaky exhaust, you want to make sure that's repaired. In fact, someone just emailed me today and wanted to know whether there's still a way to actually weld a muffler system back together, because it's a car they don't drive every day. They don't want to put a lot of money into fixing it. Heating and cooling system, you want to make sure the engine coolant, the antifreeze, is protecting the engine against freezing. A mixture of half antifreeze, half water protects an engine to -34 degrees. You want to make sure the heater works well, not just for your own comfort, but also a poorly operating heater won't defrost the windows the way it should, and that can get dangerous in poor weather. Windshield wipers, washer, the glass itself, make sure everything is working okay. When you hit that windshield washer button, you want to see a good, strong spray come out of those nozzles so you can clean off that winter grime. Also, make sure you use good winter wiper fluid. Sometimes you can get wiper fluid that it doesn't protect down to well below zero. It might even say something like summer fluid. And I've seen that for sale in stores. You want to make sure it protects at least to 20 below zero, just in case. Clean all the snow off the car. That is a real picture of someone being really stupid that didn't clean all the snow off their car. And what will happen eventually is either that snow will fall off and hit me because I'm following behind them, or as the car warms up and they step on the brakes, that mountain of snow will slide down their windshield and block their forward vision. So you want to make sure you clean all the snow off your vehicle, front, rear, and the roof. Even though it's kind of a pain, you want to make sure you do it. And get a good long handle snow brush, something called a snow broom. It looks like just a broom handle with a piece of styrofoam on the end of it. Easy to clean the snow off the roof. And in some states, Connecticut's one of them, if you're driving with snow on your car, you can be ticketed for it. Massachusetts, kind of. In Massachusetts, there's a law that says you're responsible for anything that blows off of your car. It really has more to do with, say, a truck that didn't secure something in the cargo bed, but still, if you have a big chunk of ice on the roof of your car and it blows off and it hits somebody's car behind you, you can be cited for that, for technically failure to secure objects on your vehicle. So clean your car fully. Best tools to clean your car: on the right, a good long handle snow brush. This is one that expands. The snow broom, and the one that I have looks just like that. And it was the one I have is old, and it was made by a guy up in the Worcester area, and it was actually called a snow broom, B-R-U-M. And it just works really well to clean all the snow off the car. It makes really quick work of cleaning the snow, especially coming out of work at the end of the day. If it snowed during the day and you have 4 or 5 inches of snow on your car, a couple of quick passes, and the next thing you know, you're cleaning off everybody else's car because it's so easy. Be prepared. Keep this stuff with you in your car. We've had a couple of hints of winter already. I will let you know that I have seen people come out of work at the end of the day and they're scraping the snow off their windshield with, we have ID cards to get in and out of the building, and they're using their ID card to scrape the ice off their windshield. Bring a snow brush, bring an ice scraper, put all that stuff in your car so you're ready for winter. Wiper blades. There are different kinds of winter or all-weather wiper blades. The one on the left is kind of called a unibeam blade. The one on the right is a more traditional winter wiper blade. What happens is it's just a way to either cover up the little fingers that are kind of in the wiper blade so they don't build up with ice and snow, or they eliminate it altogether. Less likely to build up in ice and snow. If you've ever driven down the road in a snowstorm and all of a sudden your wiper blades start to build up with ice, and all of a sudden they start to raise away from the windshield, and then you're not cleaning the windshield anymore. And if you're maybe a little bit foolish, like I've been before, you put down the driver's side window, and as the wiper starts to come over to the left side of the windshield, you try to catch it and smack it on the windshield to knock the snow and ice off of it. It makes a whole lot more sense to pull over the side of the road and clean the windshield back off and clean the wipers off again. But I have been known to do that before, I'll admit. Again, prepare your vehicle for winter. Gasoline in the wintertime burns quicker because it's designed to allow the car to start easier, so you get less energy out of it. You can conserve gasoline. I mean, right now gasoline's cheap, but it went up a few cents. And I think in the local gas station, the local Stop and Shop station near my house, my wife said to me today, she noticed a 10-cent increase. So we're seeing a little bit of increase in gas prices. So if you have a lot of extra stuff in your car that doesn't need to be there, eliminating weight will also help improve fuel economy. If your car doesn't need premium gasoline, don't put it in it. It's not going to make the car start any better in the wintertime. Some people think, oh, it's winter, it's going to be cold, I better put high test in my car. Doesn't make any sense. Doesn't do anything for your car. You also have to be, the driver has to be prepared. Dress appropriately. Gloves work better than mittens if you wear big fuzzy mittens. Mittens are great to keep your fingers warm in the winter, not so good for driving. No fuzzy steering wheel covers either, because they can fall off, especially if they get stuck on your gloves. Floor mats, some people put winter mats in their car. If you do, take the factory mats out, put the winter mats in, don't stack them on top of each other, make sure they're secured. And I don't know if you can read the caption on the bottom of that picture, and it says, poor kid, can't move, he's paraplegic. I was actually back, this was back, well, when there was still toll booths. Remember toll booths? Now we don't have them anymore. But there was a guy in a car next to me, and he was all bundled up in his winter clothes and his hat and his scarf and his gloves, and looked like he had this big bulky coat on. And at first I kind of wondered how quickly he could move if he had to steer really quick, because he looked a little bit like this person. And the other thing that happened was, while we were waiting to get through the toll booth, I'm sure his car was 100 degrees inside with the heat on, and he had all these warm clothes on, and he literally fell asleep at the toll booth. So, and I looked over and I saw his head nod down, and he kind of fell asleep and woke back up. Did it 2 or 3 times. In fact, once I beeped the horn in my car, and it kind of woke him up. Then he fell asleep again, and he tapped the car in front of him. Didn't do any damage because he was going so slow. But I'm sure when you're all bundled up with all kinds of, layers of clothes on, and you have your car, car heat cranked way up, it's awful easy to fall asleep. So dress appropriately for winter. If you have to be out in the weather, you want to wear good warm clothes. When you're driving, your car is probably warm enough where you can take a couple layers off at least and be comfortable, so you can drive comfortably too. Pack a winter road kit, cell phone and a charger, blanket, boots, gloves, hat, scarf, kitty litter, snow shovel, scraper, all kinds of stuff. I have behind me here, let's see. This is some of the things. This is one of those like space blanket things. So you get them at camping stores. This came from Target. But it's kind of this aluminum foil insulated thing. I'll never take it out of the package because you can never put it back in because it folds all up in a little package. The most I will ever do to it is do that. But it's handy if your car breaks down and you're trying to stay warm, you wrap yourself in it and it'll help you stay warm. Also, if for some reason you had to change a flat tire, it gives you something to kneel on. So you don't get all muddy and dirty, and it just gives you something to kind of stay warm with. If you are going to be out, this is a little retro reflective vest that you can put on just so you can be seen when you're going down the road. This is just a really little simple first aid kit. This one I took from work one day, but it's just if you change a flat tire and you skin a knuckle or something. Couple different ice scrapers, a little throwaway one that you can kind of keep over your visor in case of emergencies. Again, keeps you from using your driver's license or a credit card to scrape your windshield. This is at least a little better than that. A little more rugged ice scraper that just does a little bit better job. This morning, when I went out to go, or yesterday morning when I went out, my car hadn't moved since the little bit of snow we got over the weekend, and it literally had an inch of ice on the windshield. I went out, I went to chop at it with this ice scraper, this very ice scraper, didn't touch it. I went out, I let the car run for a while, and finally to the point where I got a little bit more heat on the windshield, but I ended up actually kind of going to an old standby, some windshield de-icer spray, sprayed the ice, and it was enough to start to melt it a little bit. It has a built-in ice scraper, kind of handy. You know, having some kind of winter gloves, these aren't really good winter gloves, but having some kind of gloves or extra winter clothes is kind of nice to have in your car. Lock de-icer, most people have remote key fobs now, so you don't really need lock de-icer. This lock de-icer is a replacement for the one I had last year because one of my coworkers, her car still used a key, the lock was frozen, and she came over and said, "You don't happen to have lock de-icer, do you?" And I happen to have lock de-icer. So she was kind enough to give me a new one. So I have it. I always like to have a few basic tools with me just in case. Just in case something happens. This is a emergency triangle. So if you did break down, you could set up the emergency triangle. If you didn't have that fancy jump start light, this is what happens when you do traffic safety stuff. People send you these things for Christmas. This is a portable cone, and I don't know if it's still going to work, and it lights up and flashes. So one of my coworkers bought me this for Christmas a couple years ago, and I can't say I've ever actually used it, other than I did use it in a TV interview once, and the TV people kind of got a kick out of it. But it lights up steady and it blinks, and it folds up and it doesn't take up any room, and it's actually probably a little bit more practical than these big orange safety triangles. Although I had two of these, I only have one now, because I got a flat tire out on Route 495 one day coming home from work, and I stopped over by the side of the road. I took out my road emergency triangle, which was still in the package, took it out and set it up about 150 feet away from the end of my car. And as I was walking back to my car, someone ran it over. The good thing is they ran it over and not me. So I was happy about that. They didn't look real happy when they hit it, but better having them hit that than me. And it went in the trash afterwards, but I had a second one. And again, a good kind of long handle, even this isn't the longest handle snow brush, but at least it's a snow brush so you can, clean most of the snow off your car. I only put this in here to remind myself. Not that I really need to keep ibuprofen with me, but if you do need medication for some reason, I always like to think when it comes to wintertime, plan for the worst and hope for the best. So if you're somebody who needs to take medication periodically, have a little quantity of it in your car just in case. Those of us who are old enough to remember the blizzard of '78, where people were stuck in their cars for 3 days, I've kind of felt bad for the people that might have been diabetics or had high blood pressure or whatever the case is, and they needed to have medication with them. Not a bad idea. Finally, this is just a little poncho. So if the weather's bad, you can at least, and if you are going to go walking, and I don't recommend, if you're stuck in your car, unless you know where you are and you can get to someplace safely, stay in your car with your emergency flashers on and your seatbelt on. because in case somebody hits you from behind, you want to make sure you're belted in your car just in case. Unless you know, say you're broken down and you know, I can walk by the side of the road safely, and it's only about a quarter of a mile to the Dunkin' Donuts that's open. I can go sit there and wait for someone to come and get me. If you're out in the middle of nowhere and you don't know where you are, stay in your car. Don't just start to go wandering and hope that that Burger King that you drove by a little while ago isn't that far away, and you find out it was actually a couple of miles and you're walking in the dark in a couple of miles. Just not a good idea. So always better if you are gonna, if you do break down, stay with the car. Ideally, stay in the car. If you can stay, you know, if you can get out of the car and stay safely someplace else, it's good. But most of the time, that's not the case. I do like to keep, you know, even though everybody's cell phone now is a flashlight, I do kind of like to keep a flashlight of some kind with me. My luck, I would use my cell phone for a flashlight, and then when I needed to actually use my cell phone as a phone, it would go dead. So I like to keep a flashlight with me just in case. So those are some of the things that I keep in my own car for kind of a winter emergency kit. And it just, again, my thoughts are I hopefully never ever use them, but occasionally I do. Snacks and water, sports drinks don't freeze as fast as water does. So, but having some snacks, again, if you're somebody who has to eat periodically, having some snacks in your car is a good idea. Reduce your risk of a crash. In winter driving, everything should be done slower. Enter intersections slower, step on the brake slower, step on the accelerator slower. Everything's just done slower. Bridges, overpasses, underpasses are always the first to freeze up because they don't get the heat from the earth that melts the snow off of them, melts the ice off of them. Like I said, this morning we had a lot of black ice. So that's just moisture that collects overnight because of the temperature change. Temperature drops overnight. You get this little thin layer of black ice, microscopic layer of ice on the road, and it can be treacherous. One of my coworkers used to live on Cape Cod, and there was this one section of Route 6 between sort of Yarmouth and Hyannis, and it was a huge problem with black ice in that one area for whatever reason. And he got to the point where he actually said, I think I'm going to retire early. I don't think I can deal with this anymore. Because it just was that bad in that kind of place. So he just opted to do it. Never use your cruise control on snow and ice. It just doesn't make any sense. So don't let that kind of snowy road turn into that. You just don't want to do that. So if you do get into a skid, take your foot off the gas. Don't step on the brake. It says here, shift your car into neutral. Don't bother doing that. But don't step on the gas, don't step on the brake, and look and steer in the direction you want the car to go. So probably everybody here has heard, you know, steer in the direction of the skid. What does that mean? Does that mean the back end of the car is skidding, the front end of the car? Don't even try to overthink that. Take your foot off the gas, don't step on the brake, and steer in the direction you want the car to go. As you take your foot off the gas and the car slows down, it's going to gain some control, because no matter what kind of car it is, when you take your foot off the accelerator, the weight transfers to the front wheels. Now, all of a sudden, the front wheels get a little more weight on them, and you get a little more directional control, and then you can turn the wheel, get the car going where it wants to go. You might have to kind of correct back a little bit, and then slowly accelerate back again. But the important part is don't step on the brake in a skidding condition like that, because you won't get the control you need. It'll just cause the car to skid more. So even if your car has anti-lock brakes, it's best to take your foot off the gas, don't step on the brake, look and steer where you want the car to go. And so so that's one of the things we always look at. And I apologize, I didn't have my little diagram here. So it's all the screen sharing thing. So that's a diagram. So when you start to skid, take your foot off the gas, don't step on the brake, and look and steer in the direction you want the car to go. So that's the important part. Braking system, if your car has anti-lock brakes, which it probably does, don't pump the brake pedal, just stand on the brake pedal and steer. Anti-lock brakes allow you to brake and steer at the same time. So if you are driving and all of a sudden you need to stop short, this is one of those cases where you want to push on the brake pedal, let the anti-lock brakes do their job. Skidding again, look in the direction of your path of travel. Don't panic. Steer the vehicle in the direction you want the front of the vehicle to go, and avoid slamming on the brakes most of the time, and wait for the wheels to grip the road, and then the vehicle start to steer again. The important part is don't panic. That's the hard part. It really is for people. And don't forget that if you are, most of the time, if you leave enough room between you and the cars in front of you, you don't have that problem. We'll get into something in a minute too. Restraint systems, make sure your head restraint is positioned properly somewhere kind of in the middle of your head. Make sure your hands are at sort of 3 and 9 or 4 and 10, 4 and 8. If your steering wheel was the numbers of a clock, so 3 and 9 or 4 and 8. The old 10 and 2 that we used to talk about, not practical for today's cars. So, and again, never warm up your car in a closed garage. Don't use your parking brake in the winter, it may freeze. Keep your gas tank at least half full in the wintertime. It will avoid having the car freeze up, the gas line freeze up. But more important is if you get out on the highway or out on the road and you get stuck in a winter traffic jam, you don't want to run out of gas. So having your gas tank at least half full will prevent that from happening, and compensate for inclement weather with defensive driving. One of the things that you can do when you think about driving in the wintertime is leave a lot of room between you and the car in front of you. When anyone here learned how to drive, they probably learned leave 1 car length for every 10 miles an hour out on the road. Sounds like good advice, but it really isn't. First off, we don't really know what a car length is. Is it a Mini Cooper or a Chevrolet Suburban? Is it a little tiny car or a great big truck? Better is to look at following distance in seconds. So when a car in front of you goes by a fixed object, it should take you about 3 seconds to get to that same object. So if you see a shadow in the road and the car in front of you crosses through the shadow, if you kind of count 1 1,000s, 2 1,000s, 3 1,000s, it should take you about 3 seconds to get to that same spot. Doesn't make any difference if you're going 30 miles an hour or you're going 60 miles an hour. 3 seconds is a minimum following distance that you try to use. In inclement weather, leave more, lots more. The other thing is get your eyes up and look well down the road. A lot of times in bad weather, people are staring at the taillights of the car in front of them. Leave plenty of room between you and that car. Get your eyes up, look way down the road, and you can anticipate things that are going to happen in bad weather. I was driving home one night, and I was looking way down the road, like I always try to. And what happened was, when I was looking down the road, I saw a lot of snow flying in different directions where it shouldn't have been. Well, what happened was somebody skidded out of control, and they was spinning. They were kind of doing a donut in the middle of the highway. Well, I saw it happening way before I had to make any real plans for it, but I already had my foot off the gas. I was starting to try to decide, do I want to go to the right-hand lane and get out of the way? Am I looking behind me, seeing if the person behind me is paying attention? And what ended up happening, sure enough, somebody, 8 or 10 cars ahead of me ran into the car that was in the middle of the road because they weren't paying attention. So if you get your eyes up and look down the road, the other thing is, when you take your eyes off the road directly in front of you on any roadway condition, get your foot sort of hovering over the brake pedal, because you never know, you might have to stop. So whether it's a dry road or a rainy road, whatever the case is, when your eyes aren't on the road directly in front of you, kind of have your foot kind of hovering over the brake pedal. It takes about a half a second to a second to realize something happened in front of you. And then it takes about a second to get your foot off the gas and onto the brake. So if you can save a little bit of time by having your foot kind of already hovering over the brake pedal, so much better. That's especially important if can be anything from, pulling into a shopping center looking for a parking spot, and you look into the left and the right for a parking spot. and all of a sudden you look back and there's a car stopped right in front of you that you didn't expect. If your foot's right over the brake pedal, you're going to be able to hit that brake quicker and prevent a collision. And let's face it, a crash, the difference between a crash and one that didn't happen is simply just not running into somebody. You know, you can get all nervous, you can get all hot and sweaty about it, but as long as you didn't hit them, it's all good. So, you know, again, driving in wintertime, you don't have to be afraid of it. You just have to respect the winter conditions and clean off your car, maintain your car, good battery, good tires, keep that winter emergency kit of some kind. Doesn't have to be all this stuff, but a good snow brush, a good ice scraper, winter gloves, winter boots. Too often now we kind of leave our house with, you know, the shoes we're wearing. And if we broke down by the side of the road and we decided we had to walk, doing it in, you know, flip-flops isn't the greatest way to be out in the wintertime. Not that you probably wear flip-flops in the winter, but you might, you never know. So anyway, that's my presentation. If there's any more questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
There are some in the chat.
Okay,
So what the first,
let me
you want to take a look at them?
let me go to the chat. Let's see. Frost guards.
The one above it, if lenses are white and hazy, how do you?
Oh, what do you do? If they're white and hazy, you can actually try a little do-it-yourself kit to try to polish the headlight lenses and get them nice and clear. You can go to an auto parts store, department store, Walmart, Target, and in the automotive section, you can buy a kit to try to polish the headlight lenses. And it's a little bit of work, and it does work pretty well. If it's in a kind of a emergency, if you will, and I have no idea why this works, but somebody called me 6 months ago and said, I went to go get my car inspected, and the person said, your headlights are too dim, they're too shady, they're too shadowy. I can't put a sticker on this car. What can I do? And I said, well, you can go to the auto parts store, you can buy a kit, and you can get a kit for $15, and you kind of hand polish them. You can get a kit for $30 that includes a little buffing wheel that you put into a cordless drill, and you can try polishing them, and that will get them all nice and clean, and it works really well. Or if you go to your cupboard and there's a bottle or a can of off insect repellent, and spray it all over the plastic lenses and wipe it off, and do that a couple of times. And I have no idea what's in off that cleans the plastic lenses, but it does. Now, it's not permanent and it's not 100%, but it does work. And the person said to me, they called me up the next day and said, I went and sprayed off and I wiped them off and they came up cleaner. I went to the same guy that wanted to reject my car, and he said, I don't know what you did, but they look fine now and I got a sticker. So I don't know why that. I actually did. I looked it up once. There's a chemical in there that does something to the plastic, but I can't imagine what it does to your skin at the same time. But it does clean plastic headlight lenses. So, but better off as a real, get one of the kits. Or one of my former coworkers, her car, the headlights were all kind of white and shadowy and cloudy, and the garage she went to said, we can polish those up for $50. And she said they look beautiful afterwards. And she said she was amazed at how much better light there was on the road at night. So so you can have a garage do it too. Frost guards. What do you mean by frost guards?
It's a thing you put over your windshield, but especially you put it over the wipers.
Oh, okay, I know what you mean. Yeah. So it's supposed to keep the windshield from getting all frosty, and it gets the windshield. And if you do get snow, you can just peel it off, and the snow doesn't get all stuck and frozen to the windshield wiper blades.
Yeah.
Someone sent me one of those a couple of years ago. They do work, but they're such a pain to use, you know, because then you got this wet kind of thing afterwards that you got to figure out what to do with it. And I put it in the back of my car, and of course I drove to work, and then when I came out of work, I left it in the car because it wasn't snowing then. And it was kind of this frozen folded up thing afterwards. And I'm like, the idea is good, but you could probably also do that with a blanket or something if you really wanted to. But it does work. It does keep a little bit of, keeps a little bit of heat on the windshield, I guess, too. So you don't get that sometimes morning frost. But again, you got to figure out what to do with it afterwards. This one in theory, you were supposed to roll it all up in a kind of like a roll of wallpaper when you were done with it. That's how this one worked. And again, it worked. It worked.
I put it on the garbage can to dry off, and I
Oh,
put the inside out.
Okay,
It
yeah.
dries off,
Yeah, no, they work. Again, it's just one more thing they have to deal with sometimes in the morning that you gotta, I gotta uncover this thing and do this with it. And I'm not a big car warmer up person either. I'll go out and start up the car if it's really frosty and frozen, but if it's really cold out, I'll just go out, start the car. By the time I get my seatbelt on, turn the heat on, change the radio station, that's about all I let my car warm up. I just drive it slow and reasonably until I start to feel heat coming out of the heater. And then I drive it kind of normal, but I take it nice and easy while the engine's cold, because when you let a car warm up for a long period of time, you've warmed up the engine and the engine oil, but you haven't warmed up the rest of the car. The brakes are still cold, the steering's still cold, the transmission's still cold, all those things are still cold. So, it's having a remote car starter is a kind of a nice convenience. It does, it is nice to get into a warm car that you don't have to run outside and start it. It's a whole lot cheaper than owning a garage, but still, it doesn't do anything for the rest of the car. Even if I started up my car with a remote car starter, I would still drive it nice and easy for the first 5 or 10 minutes until all the rest of the fluids warm up. So the other question was, so if you skid, do what? Don't panic. Don't panic. That's the big thing. Look, don't step on the gas, don't step on the brake. Look and steer in the direction you want the car to go.
Okay, so
So-
you don't press the brake.
Don't step on the brake. Don't step on the gas, because when you take your foot off the gas pedal, weight will transfer to the steering wheels, so to the front of the car, and it will give you a little bit more steering control. If you step on the brakes sometimes, especially, say you were going around a corner and you were going a little bit too fast and you were stepping on the brakes, the car could start to skid. And the more you step on the brakes, the car's going to still skid in the kind of the direction you wanted to go. As soon as you took your foot off the brake pedal, the tires would start to gain traction again, and you'd notice the car would start to steer in the direction you wanted to go. And we always say look and steer in the direction where you want to go, because your hands tend to follow your eyes. So have you ever noticed you're driving down the road and something catches your attention? Maybe it's a house that went up for sale, or somebody just painted something, or in my case, it's someone selling pies by the side of the road. I don't know, something, and it kind of catches your attention. Next thing you know, you're almost up on the sidewalk, because your hands tend to follow your eyes. So if you do get in a skid, force yourself to look where you want to go, and your hands will tend to follow that. So look and steer where you want the car to go, and don't step on the brake. Now, if you're out of control, you're spinning around 360 degrees, and you look like someone at the end of a NASCAR race, jam on the brakes and hope for the best. But in normal conditions, normal driving conditions, when you don't have that ability to have any control, don't step on the gas, don't step on the brake, just let the car come under control naturally, and look and steer where you want the car to go. That's the important part. Anything else? No? Going once, twice, 3 times?
Oh, this was great.
Mark Shieldrop, any questions? No. Good for you. And again, if you want to get a hold of me, the easiest way to ask me a question, since I'm not here, is AAA.com/cardoctor, and I will be happy to try to answer any questions. I usually take Sundays off, though. So if you ask me a question Monday through Saturday, I'll always try to answer it. If you're in the Rhode Island area, you can read my car question and answer column in the Providence Journal. You can find it on boston.com in the automotive section. If you're really bored on a Saturday morning at 10 o'clock, you can tune into my radio show on North Shore 1049. If you're out in Long Island, you can read me in the Long Island Newsday newspaper on Fridays. So, and the AAA publication, your AAA, of course, too. So, but AAA.com/car doctor, there's a place that says ask a question, and I will always try to answer questions pretty much anytime I see them pop up. So I will do my best.
And speaking of that, John will be back with us next Tuesday night to answer your car questions.
Yeah, and I have a little kind of common questions that people ask me. I will tell you a little secret though, that I did a program like this a week ago, and
Yeah.
it was supposed to be, I think it was supposed to be emergencies on the road, and I kind of did a different program by mistake. And they said, oh, I think the people were expecting this. And I went, oh, sorry, but everyone asked a bunch of questions, so it worked out fine. So who knows what next Tuesday could be? You
Well,
never
we're
know.
good with that too,
Yeah,
because
yeah, okay.
this has been great.
So you never know. I'll tell you one thing: it'll never be a cooking show. You know what?
We handle that too.
Yeah, you don't want to eat anything I cook. So,
Wow.
but anyway, thank you for inviting me. And again, AAA.com/car doctor. I will do my best to try to answer any questions that come in.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Be safe. Stay well. Wash your hands.
You too. Thank you.
All right.